Hello and welcome back to more 2025-2026 state governments and officials. Today we are looking at the state of Illinois. Yeah, let's go ahead and dive into this here. Of course, we know about Illinois, the state capital. It's one of these ones where your most populous city is not necessarily what would be the capital. People go think Illinois, they think Chicago. No, that's the most populous city, but it's not the capital. Capital is Springfield. Yeah, often called the land of Lincoln because it is where Lincoln held from when he became president. He was a lawyer from Illinois and, yeah, became a lawmaker and eventually ran for president. But, yeah. Now, let's go ahead and look at the government of Illinois in general. Uh, it has three branches. We see this very commonly with all the states so far in connection with the federal government. Those three branches: an executive branch, a legislative branch, and a judicial branch. Uh, the executive branch, you have numerous elected offices. Um, Governor as the chief executive, he serves for the state as the president does for the country. Um, and there's numerous departments, agencies, boards, commissions. Legislative branch is your Congress, which for Illinois, it's one of these that calls it the General Assembly. Like I said, some states call theirs the General Assembly, some call it the legislative or legislature. Yeah. But it's another bicameral body, House of Representatives, and a Senate. And of course, your judiciary, Supreme Court, and lower courts. Before we get into the if I can find my mouse. Before we get into the actual government, let's look at the Constitution. Uh, let's see. There have been four. Your most recent one, the current one, was adopted in 1970. So there have been four total. Can we get a look? When it was going for statehood and was approved, it formed its first constitution in, well, it had the convention for it in 1818. Usually, a lot of these things don't take place until the next year. Don't go into effect until the next year, but yeah. And then you have a new convention for a new constitution in 1848 and another in 1870. Finally, 1970, which is the current constitution for Illinois. you'll see, as we have seen in a number of the states we've looked at so far, they've had multiple constitutions. The U.S. federal government, they had the Articles of Confederation and then the actual Constitution. So, if you want to get technical, you could probably say two. But yeah. Now, with that done, let's look at Illinois' executive branch. 6 elected officials. You have your governor, the current one, J.D. Pritzker. There's the homepage for the Illinois government showing Pritzker. Your lieutenant governor, Juliana Stratton. Here's the homepage for lieutenant governor, the actual Illinois page. Your Attorney General, Kwame Raoul. Here's the homepage for him. Attorney General, Illinois. Your Secretary of State, Alexei Giannoulias, sorry. There's the government page of Illinois for him. Your State Comptroller, Susana Mendoza. There's the Illinois government page. And finally, we have Mike Frerichs, your state treasurer. And there's the Illinois government page for them. So now, they've got a number of other cabinet positions. Let's see if we can get any information to further dig upon the executive branch. Illinois is one of 26 states that elect their governor on the same ticket as their lieutenant governor. Yes, there are some states that work like the federal elections for executive branch do, where you have a president, he has a running mate, vice president, and they run a governor with a running mate to be lieutenant governor. But there are 24 states that elect them separately. I believe Virginia does it that way, because you usually vote for governor, vote for a lieutenant governor. So you can have opposing governors and lieutenant governors from different parties, but they still want to, in ideal situations, they should want to try to work together for the best of the state. I hate the party system so much right now. With just 2 parties, we should have more to force coalitions. Not this pathetic bickering back and forth. Anyway, your cabinet or state agencies, we have the Department on Aging. Department on Agriculture, Department on Central Management Services, Department on Children and Family Services, Department on Commerce and Economic Opportunity, Department of Corrections, the Emergency Management Agency, Department of Employment Security, Department of Financial and Professional Regulation, Department of Healthcare and Family Services, Department of Human Rights, Department of Human Services, Department of Juvenile Justice, Department of Labor, Department of the Lottery, Department of Natural Resources, Department of Public Health, Department of Revenue, Department of State Police, Department of Transportation, and Department of Veterans Affairs. Former Lieutenant Governor and Attorney General serves as the General Counsel to the Governor J.B. Pritzker. So yeah, that's the current situation with that. In the legislature, there are 118 individuals in the House and 59 in the Senate. And representatives elect from their chamber a speaker and speaker pro tem. The senators elect from the chamber a president of the Senate, and the governor has different types of vetoes, such as a full veto, reduction veto, and an amendatory veto. I keep wanting to say video, but the General Assembly has the power to override vetoes, but they've got to have a 3/5 majority. So 60% in each chamber. So yeah. And a quick overview of the judiciary. Supreme Court has limited original jurisdiction because it is supposed to be the highest court in the land, which means rarely will anything start at the Supreme Court. But it does have final appellate jurisdiction, meaning everything, they're the final stop. Mandatory jurisdiction in capital cases and cases where the constitutionality of laws have been called into question. And the discretionary jurisdiction from the appellate court. The appellate court is the court of the first appeal for civil and criminal cases. So if they're originally appealed, they go to the appellate court. Circuit courts are trial courts of original jurisdiction, and 25 judicial circuits in the state. 24 numbered circuits and 1 for Cook County, which is the large county. Well, Cook County itself's not really that large, but it is where Chicago is. Each comprising one or more of Illinois' 102 counties. The circuit court has general jurisdiction and can decide, with few exceptions, any kind of case. So, that's a broad overview. Let's look at Governor of Illinois. We want to look at your current is J.B. Pritzker. Qualifications. The line of succession remember, in the federal government, there is a line of succession. Most people know the first few positions: president, vice president. Then I believe it is Speaker of the House. Then, if I remember right, it goes something like Secretary of State. Anyway, there's a long list. But apparently, there is a succession list in Illinois. You have governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, secretary of state. Let's pop this open here. A list of governors. Because it's always fun to kind of see who they had early on. There is no term limits to being governor, and each term is a 4-year term. So very much like the way the president is. Your first ever governor for Illinois, and this is when it was still a territory, was John Boyle. He was appointed by James Madison, our fourth president. Yeah, Madison Monroe. Okay, and then he was followed up by Ninian Edwards, who was appointed by Madison. Then the state of Illinois, your first official governor as a state, first elected governor, Shadrach Bond, followed by Edward Coase, Ninian Edwards, who had served as an appointed governor, so that's an interesting one, John Reynolds, William Lee D. Ewing, Joseph Duncan, Thomas Carlin, Thomas Ford, Augustus French, Joe Aldrich Madison, and William Henry Bissell. John Wood would be governor while Illinois, the Civil War kicked off, so. Richard Yates, Richard Oglesby, John M. Palmer, Richard J. Oglesby again, so term limited. So apparently they did have a limit 2 terms originally, but they got rid of that. That's interesting. Shelby Moore Cullom, John Marshall Hamilton. Usually it's the other way around. You see no terms, but then they're like, we want term limits. Anyway, with that, let's look at the General Assembly. As we've spoken about, divided into a Senate and House, your current Senate President is Don Harmon, and current House Speaker is Chris Welch. This is interesting because there is no lieutenant governor serving as head of the Senate like you see with some states and the federal government. This is just, you have a leader of the Senate and a leader of the House. It has nothing to do with the executive branch. Senate, 59 members. 40 Democrats, 19 Republicans is your current makeup. 118 members in the House. 78 Democrats, 40 Republicans. So, yeah. That's not a vacant, so he probably is independent that caucuses with Republicans. But anyway. Let's see. Two presidents of the U.S., Lincoln and Obama, began their political careers in the Illinois General Assembly. They both serving in the Illinois House and Illinois Senate. The Illinois General Assembly created the state constitution. We're looking for further information. Members of the General Assembly may not hold other public offices or receive appointments by the governor, and their salaries may not be increased during their tenure. I wish we could put a freeze on frickin' federal legislators. And we need, it's not necessarily their pay that we should be worried about. It's the fact they get bribed. The great majority of these individuals that go into Congress, they're only supposed to be getting paid, I think it's like 100 and some thousand per year. They come out millionaires. You know there's some BS going on. Let's see. Administrative rules. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. But there's a look at the General Assembly. Finally, let's look at our court system. Oh, well, for the executive branch, they talk about the agencies. That's in it. Okay, that's cool. But anyway, court systems. We have the circuit courts, the appellate court, and the Supreme Court. There is also a court of claims that decides all monetary claims against the government and is better characterized as part of the legislative branch. So while it is a judicial group, it is actually probably closer to the legislative branch. That's interesting. Your circuits for your circuit courts. You got all these circuits. You can see some of them got filled in at the last second. 21st. 22nd, way up here. Down here's the 20th. It's like, we got to start fitting in extra ones here because population changes and everything. So, yeah. And then, of course, one for Cook. Chicago. Where Chicago's so big, it encompasses Cook and a good portion of the 18th. So yeah, they just, hey, Cook County. um, some judges are elected while others are appointed. For elected offices, judges are nominated in party primaries and elected in partisan elections. There are 7 justices of the Supreme Court are elected from the 5 appellate judicial districts of the state. 3 justices from the 1st district, which is Cook County. 1 from each of the other 4 districts. Each district is elected for a term of 10 years. So 10-year terms, 7 justices elected. Majority of appellate court judges, 18 in the 1st district and between 7 and 9 in each of the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, are elected for a term of 10 years, with the remaining judges having been appointed by the Supreme Court of Illinois. Members to the Supreme Court also have the authority to elevate trial judges to the appellate court on a temporary basis. So, if you need to fill in a spot where suddenly there's a disappearance, you can serve for right now until we get a more permanent situation. Let's see. Talk about attorneys. Accusations of corruption. Accusations have been made of corruption in the probate division of the Circuit Court of Cook County, resulting in a 3-year suspension recommendation against the accusing attorney by the Attorney Registration and Disciplinary Commission. But let's dig into these here. We'll start with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court of Illinois is the state Supreme Court and consists of 7 justices, including a Chief Justice. So, Chief Justice, 6 associates. The court has limited original jurisdiction, meaning very few cases start in the Supreme Court, but has final appellate jurisdiction, final stop for anything to be appealed to. Prior to the state's moratorium and abolition of the death penalty, the court has mandatory and appellate jurisdiction in capital cases and cases where the constitutionality of laws have been called into question, as well as had discretionary jurisdiction from the Illinois Appellate Court. So, it is required that any appeals regarding capital cases, death penalty, it's been since abolished, but and then cases where constitutionality of certain laws are called into question, those go straight to the Supreme Court, and then it has the right to look at whatever cases feel they should look at from the appellate court. Because just like any other state or the federal, the Supreme Court has the right to go, we don't feel we should be looking at it, or we feel we should definitely look at it. That is kind of how a lot of the cases go. Appellate Court. The Illinois Appellate Court is the court of the first appeal for civil criminal cases. There are 3 Illinois appellate court judges who hear each case, and the concurrence of 2 is necessary to render a decision. So, Supreme Court 7, the appellate court is a 3-judge panel. And you need to get 2 out of 3, at least. The appellate court will render its opinion in writing in the form of a published opinion or unpublished order. As of 1935, decisions of the Illinois Appellate Court become binding authority upon lower courts, the circuit courts. And the Illinois Appellate Court has 54 judges serving 5 districts, administratively centering on Chicago, which is your 1st district, Elgin, your 2nd district, Ottawa, your 3rd district, Springfield, the capital, is your 4th district, and Mount Vernon, your 5th district. So 5 districts, 54 judges. It's clear there are some reserve judges, because if you do 5 times 3, that's 15. So there's a lot of reserve judges. Maybe some districts use more than 3, but 3 seems to be the base. Civil courts, or civil cases appealed from the Illinois Appellate Court, are heard by the Supreme Court upon the grant of a petition for leave to appeal under the Illinois Supreme Court Rule 315, a certificate of importance under Illinois Supreme Court Rule 316, or a petition for appeal as a matter of right under Illinois Supreme Court Rule 317. The same rules apply in criminal cases. And finally, your base, the circuit courts. The Illinois circuit courts are trial courts of original jurisdiction. This is where your cases are supposed to originally start. There are 24 judicial circuits in the state, each comprising one or more of Illinois' 102 counties. 6 circuits comprised solely of a single county are Cook, Kane, Will, DuPage, Lake, and McHenry. Those counties are the only ones who take up a single circuit. There are 24 total, so you're looking at 18 that for the rest of the state. Yeah, the other 18 contain between 2 and 12 counties. 12 counties. It's where the population's so low, but that's a long distance to drive for a circuit court. The circuit court has general jurisdiction and can decide with few exceptions any kind of case. The exceptions are redistricting of the Illinois General Assembly and the ability of the governor of Illinois to serve or resume office. Let's see, so they normally have general jurisdiction, though there are issues when cases must go beyond the circuit court to begin with. The circuit court also shares jurisdiction with the Supreme Court of Illinois to hear cases relating to revenue, income, mandamus, prohibition, and habeas corpus. Prohibition is, of course, prevention, a ban on something. And habeas corpus is talking about, oh shoot. There's another word for it, but basically your right to a trial. The writ of habeas corpus, legal provision invoking the jurisdiction of a court to review the unlawful detention or imprisonment of a individual and request the individual's custodian to bring the prisoner to court to determine whether the detention is lawful. I keep forgetting what mandamus is. I've seen the word several times. Judicial remedy in common law jurisdictions, consisting of a court order that commands a government official to or entity to perform an act it is legally required to perform as part of its legal duties, or to refrain from performing an act the law forbids it from doing. Basically saying, do your damn job, or that's not what you are supposed to do. However, if the Supreme Court chooses to excuse its jurisdiction over these cases, the Circuit Court may not decide them. So if the Supreme Court says we're not going to cover it, Circuit Court can't go back and do it. They're not an appellate court. But they do review administrative decisions of state agencies, certain ones. There are two kinds of judges in the Circuit Court. Circuit judges who are elected and associate judges appointed by the elected judges. It's interesting. An associate judge can hear any case except criminal cases punishable by a prison term of 1 year or more, unless the associate judge has received approval from the chief judge of the Circuit Court to hear other cases. So, in your Circuit Court, you have judges who are elected. Then you have judges who aren't, because they're appointed by the elected judges. So, interested. But they can't hear certain cases unless given approval. That's interesting. But this has been a look at the state government and officials for the state of Illinois. We'll go ahead and end the episode here. As always, educate thyself, think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll be putting my links and sources in the description box below the video. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.